The radius of the spiral at any point represents the expenses in terms of cost or budget of the project. Each loop is going to work with different phases of the spiral model. During the implementation of any of the requirements of a client, they may come across some unknown risks. Those risks are handled with the help of a spiral model. Hello everyone, it is Dr. Ravikumar YB, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, MYSURU, the Temple of Excellence. In today's class, you will be taught about the software engineering prototype model called spiral model. In this case, spiral model is one of the most important software development lifecycle models. As you have already seen that it is like a spiral kind of information. What does this mean? Indicates that we have 4 quadrants here. In the first quadrant, you will learn something. In the second quadrant, you will learn something. Third, you will learn. Fourth, you will learn. So there are different phases. So how the risks are handled with the help of prototyping is a topic of interest. A spiral with many loops you can observe there. The exact number of loops of the spiral is unknown and can vary from project to project. Each loop of the spiral is called as a phase of the software development process. If I consider one of the loop from here to here, it is called as one of the phase. If I consider the next loop here, another phase. Third loop here, another phase. Fourth loop here, another phase. So we have different phases in each of these projects. So it depends on the type of project we adopt. So the exact number of phases needed to develop the product can be varied from the project manager depending upon the project risks. If that is the case, as the project manager dynamically determines the number of phases, so the project manager has the important role to develop a product using the spiral model. That is, the time required to complete the software product is determined with the help of spiral prototype model. The radius of the spiral at any point represents the expenses or costs. Please note this, it is very, very important. At any point represents the expenses. From here, it is very, very important. The radius of the spiral at any point represents the expenses in terms of cost or budget of the project. And the angular dimension represents the progress made so far in the current phase. If you look at this, what is the radius of this? What is the radius of this? What is the radius of this? The angular dimension, this corresponds to the progress of the software project, and the radius corresponds to the expenses needed to complete the software product in that particular phase. That is called as this. Then the radius of the spiral at any point represents the expenses, costs of the project. The angular dimensions represents the progress made so far in the current phase. So this is very, very important in case of spiral model. You have to mention that point in it. So the first is determine the objectives and identify the alternative solutions. The second phase, identifying and resolving the risks. The third phase is develop next version of the product. Suppose if there is any new feature incorporated into it, next version of the product is to be developed. Then we have review and plan for the next phase. So we have these 4 different phases in case of the spiral model. Each phase of the spiral model is divided into 4 quadrants, as I have already told you that. The functions of these 4 quadrants are discussed as, the first one is determine the objectives, and identify the alternative solutions. That means the requirements and information must be collected and the objectives must be identified, elaborated, and analyzed at the start of every phase. Suppose if this is considered as one of the phases, one of the loop, which is the next loop, it ends at this loop. So one round indicates 4 phases are completed. Another round indicates, loop indicates another phase, 4 phases are completed. So each of these phases are going to work with different phases. That means each loop is going to work with different phases of the spiral model. Second, identify and resolve the risks. During the second phase or quadrant, all the possible solutions are evaluated to select the best possible solutions among the available options. So the risks associated with these solutions are identified and the risks are resolved using the best possible strategy. As I have already told you that with the help of a spiral model, you will be able to obtain spiral model enables the programmer refine the product, software product at every phase of an SDLC. At the end, this quadrant, the prototype is built for the best possible solution. So that ultimately the prototype model which is needed to be delivered to the client becomes an ultimate solution to the requirement of a client. The third phase is develop next version of the software product. That means the third quadrant. The identified features are developed and verified through the testing. At the end of the third quadrant, the next version of the software is available. That is, if any new features added to it, that has to be incorporated and released to the market. The final phase, review and plan for the next phase. In the fourth quadrant, the customers evaluate the so far developed version of the software. In the end, planning for the next phase is started. That means the new version of the software product is going to be planned at the end of the software product. That means during the fourth phase of the spiral model. Then, how the risks are handled. The most important feature of the spiral model is handling these unknown risks about the project as started. That means the unknown risks. That means during the implementation of any of the requirements of a client, they may come across some unknown risks. Those risks are handled with the help of a spiral model. Such risk resolutions are easily solved by developing a prototype. The spiral model supports coping up with the risks by providing the scope to build a prototype at every phase of the software development. So we have the prototype model also supports risks handling, but the risks must be identified completely before the start of the development work of the project. But in real life projects, risks may occur after the development work starts because we do not have any prototype model. So it has to be started with the prototype model. Without the prototype model, it is very difficult to forward with using the spiral model. In each phase of the spiral model, the features of the product dated and analyzed and the risks at that point in the time are identified and are resolved through the prototyping. That means you all know that the prototyping is not a actual model which is going to be simulated by the software prototype. That means the prototype is a model that is going to simulate the working model. So it is going to represent the risk handling using the prototype information incorporated into it. Thus, this model is much more flexible compared to the other SDLC models, whether it is a waterfall model or maybe a V model or maybe any of the evolutionary prototyping model. It is comparatively better than other models. So with this, I am going to conclude my session of prototyping model with respect to the spiral model. If you have any questions, kindly ask me. I will be available in the department and I can solve your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all.